Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen says she did not cajole Ireland into accepting US-backed plan for MCT minimum corporate. World leaders have endorsed a 15% rate at the G20. Ireland, with its 12.5%, had been one of the few holdouts. It signed up last month. The US Treasury Secretary said in Ireland that the country will remain a desirable place to do business. Paschal Donohoe is Ireland's Finance Minister and the Eurogroup President, with me tonight from Dublin. So why did you give in? Why did you decide that you were going to go along with it? Your lines were clear for a long time.
The reason why we went into the agreement, Richard, is because the agreement changed. The agreement became more specific about what the rate would be. The rate changed from at least 15%, which was the drafting of the agreement earlier on in the year, to 15%. So the actual rate and the certainty of the rate became precise. And I ultimately decided that it would be better that Ireland is inside the agreement and make the case for the agreement and derive our predictability and the certainty of our rate from being inside an international agreement as opposed to be outside looking in. So the reason we entered is because of the change. And that change, I believe, will give Ireland the opportunity to make the case for our competitiveness, but just in a new way.
The rate is really the headline that we've all focused on. But loopholes, differences, effective rate versus nominal rate, there are a million ways that corporations can finagle to lower tax. Do you want action on that too?
Well, this is what this agreement is looking to do, Richard, because while you're correct that much of the focus is on the rate, the other pillar of the agreement, which is in relation to the reallocation of taxing rights, means that the agreement in its entirety will deliver the kind of change that overall will deliver fairer and more effective taxation for the biggest companies in the world. And ultimately, with all of the change going on in the world, where we are as we look to put this pandemic behind us, I believe getting agreement on these matters is correct, it's appropriate, it's fair, and I want to see Ireland in the agreement and be part of making the case for that kind of change, while at the same time, I'm confident Ireland will remain very competitive.
On the question of the use of the development funds and indeed the special fund set up, the post-pandemic fund by the EU, do you support the principle of using the funds as a sword threat, whatever you want, against countries like Poland and Hungary, as the threat is being used by the Commission now? Is that something Ireland supports?
Well, we, of course, support the work of the Commission in relation to the work on the Recovery Fund and the work that they are currently engaged on with some countries regarding their role in the European Union and the rule of law. Overall, I strongly believe that these issues are better off resolved through dialogue, through engagement, and through negotiation. And I think that offers the best prospect for how we can ensure that the fundamental values at the heart of the European Union are retained, but also that the role, for example, of Poland and other countries, which are very valuable members of the European Union, that's also respected. So this is a difficult matter, and I believe it can be resolved, but ultimately can only be resolved through negotiation and then agreement at a point in the future.
As to my next question, I will spare you from having to say that monetary policy is the province of the European Central Bank. So you can take that as having been said. Now let's get to the question of inflation. Do you believe inflation, both in your own country and in the Eurogroup, do you believe it is transitory, or should measures either at the monetary or the fiscal level be taken?
Well, given the caveat you put to the question, I won't repeat it in my answer. And I listened to great interest to your interview earlier on with Jose Manuel Barroso when you compared him to an elephant. And I wasn't quite sure what comparison you were going to offer for me. But in relation to your question now and that point regarding inflation, I do believe it is transient, but I believe that period in which it is a temporary phenomenon is going to extend for longer than we may have thought possible, Richard. I do believe ultimately the supply chain pressures and the energy issues that are at the heart of some of the inflationary pressures that we're facing within Europe will improve, will moderate, but I do believe that period of elevated pricing is one that is going to continue maybe for longer than I would have thought earlier on in the year. So yes, it is transitory, but that period of transition is going on for longer than we would have expected.
Sir, you'll have to wait till our next interview to hear that description, sir. That's a good way of making sure that we get you back in the future. Minister, it's good to have you.
Delighted to be back, Richard. Thank you very much.